Thank you, Dave. I can see that engineering, certainly as a trade association, has become different than what I remembered. I also want to give a shout out to Ralph Christie as the past chair of the ACEC. And I met Ralph almost 25 years ago, and I've known him and watched his success and really the success of engineering at the same time. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of where I came from, and then a little bit about the various forms of infrastructure that we're doing in Colorado, just because I think Colorado is a great model of what the country really is and has become, and also what it needs to do. And I'm an unlikely person to be standing here, and certainly as elected office. I never ran for student council or class president. I didn't hang out with the people that did. I'm not trying to offend some of you in the crowd. But there was that sense, at least when I was growing up, that those folks were, they were just different. They were trying to get influence, and I cared more about sports. I was good at math, so I enjoyed science. I ended up getting a master's in geology. Came out to Colorado in 1981 and had about 5.5 years in the oil and gas business, and then the price of oil collapsed, and I got laid off, our company got sold, everybody got laid off, and we had, a period where there were no jobs. And I ended up, for the first couple months, I should reframe this in that we had a severance package that got every man, woman, and child in that company got the equivalent of 2 years' pay. There was an anti-takeover pill, stock at the company, if control of the company changed, you got vested in 1 year's salary. There was a bidding war, the company's stock doubled in value, so you got really 2 years. You've never seen so many people so happy to lose their jobs in your life. But for me, it was, 2 or 3 months of kind of relaxing, and then started to really look for jobs. And I was young enough that I didn't realize that when everyone is going through a recession, everyone is laying people off. Not only is no one hiring, but there are a lot of more experienced people out in the job market willing to work inexpensively. And that became, basically I was out of work for a little over 2 years, almost 2.5 years. And that process of, after about 5 or 6 months, you look in the mirror and you see a different person than who you were used to seeing. And some of the confidence and the trust you had in yourself kind of goes away. And I saw a brew pub, a restaurant that brews its own beer in California, and my brother took me to it, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. And it took me another 12 months to get the money raised and renovate this old warehouse in a part of Denver they call Lodo, lower downtown Denver, back when the rent was $1 per square foot per year. That was in 1987 we signed that lease. And it took a long time to raise the money. My own mother wouldn't invest. She kept saying, "Who wants to have dinner in a brewery?" I said, no, Mom, it's like a bakery. It's fresh. Beer is food. Didn't go over as well. Anyway, fast forward, like a lot of small business people, when you start any firm, an engineering firm, any kind of firm, you work your fingers off at the beginning. And after about 6 or 7 years of paying ourselves 26 grand a year, working 60 and 70 hours a week, suddenly beer became fashionable. And that part of downtown Denver really kind of took off. And suddenly we were rich. I mean, we were making more money than we ever dreamed. There were a couple of years we were making $700,000 or $800,000 a piece. I had 3 partners. It was, at that point, I'd volunteered on every board and committee. And it's kind of a long story, I'll spare you, but my customers had always been criticizing every single elected official, every city council member, every legislator, the mayor, the governor, always that bum, those bums. And I kept saying, but this is America. They are us. You guys, if you don't like it, you should go out there and run yourself. And they go, why would I do that? That'd be crazy. Somehow they turned that on me. And I ended up running for mayor of Denver, first thing I ever ran for in 2003. And I ran on that I'd never do a negative ad. I ran on the approach of taking the lessons of small business. And government's very different than business. I knew that. But the lessons of small business and trying to apply them to government to make government more efficient and more effective and more equitable. And at the same time, get people to believe again in government. Because I could see even back in 2003 that people were more and more cynical, more distrustful. And in the end, American democracy is a wonderful system, but it's pretty darn fragile. And part of this running for mayor was pretty much everybody guaranteed me. It was an open seat. My predecessor was term limited out. Everyone guaranteed me, there's no way you're going to win, so don't worry about it. Well, who knew? I won 2-1 against experienced politicians. We did some funny ads, got a wonderful endorsement in the newspaper. And we came in, and I tried to hire the most talented people, not the political favors, the people that had helped get me elected. I mean, most of the people that helped me get elected didn't want to work for government. And so we had this wonderful mix of people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and we really focused on getting the metro area to work together and collaborate. And like most major metropolitan areas, the downtown, the city, was at odds with almost all the suburbs. And I had a reception in my loft at my last private sector project. I built brew pubs all over the West. I had at that time about 14 restaurants. And then we'd done a bunch of old warehouse conversions. And I had this big, beautiful loft looking out over the downtown out of one side of the building and looking at the mountains from the other. And I invited all the county commissioners from all the surrounding counties, all the mayors and their spouses. There were at that time 34 different municipalities in the metro area. We had about 120 people. And this was a Saturday before I got inaugurated on a Tuesday. And I said, I gave a 90-second speech, which was essentially the days of Denver making decisions for its own benefit are over. From now on, we realize that we cannot be a great city without great suburbs. And we're going to do everything we can to make your suburbs as successful as possible. If we can't find a decision that benefits both sides, we'll work on something else. And there was a long pause and then huge applause. I mean, there was a clear hunger for that kind of collaborative approach to the challenges that every major city faces. And over the next year and a half, we went around and we got all 34 mayors to unanimously, now keep in mind, 3/4 of these mayors are Republicans in the suburbs. We got all 34 mayors to unanimously support a 0.4% sales tax increase for the whole metropolitan area to build what's called fast tracks. That was 122 miles of new light rail and commuter rail transit, largest single transit initiative in the history of the country at the time. And with all those mayors unanimously supporting it, we passed it 55, well, it was more than that, it was almost 60-40. Imagine trying to do something like that now, and it almost seems unbelievable. And yet we're now finishing that transportation, that transit system is now, we've still got a couple more lines to go, but this last spring we opened the line in from the airport. I know a bunch of you coming from out of town, at least 2 people last night told me that they took it and how much they liked it. I think what was interesting, at that time I was, just joined and became the chair of the Transportation Committee for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and we did a survey, and 19 out of the 20 largest metropolitan areas, their chambers of commerce wanted to support a tax increase to build transportation infrastructure, light rail, better highway expansions. I think this was a way and an opportunity, and still is, to look at our future in a way, because if we don't invest in it, we're going to be in a real challenge. And I want to talk now a little bit specifically about what our challenges are in Colorado, because it's the same challenges we're facing nationwide. And I'm not going to make this a political speech. I am supporting Hillary Clinton, and a big reason of that is, I got vetted for the VP thing, which thank God that didn't work out that way. But I did spend about 3 hours with her, and I was so impressed that I could trust her. But I think she is absolutely sincere in her desire to invest, $800 million or even $1 trillion over a period of 8 or 10 years into our infrastructure, and I think it's critical. We look at what we see in Colorado, and we've been growing. We've been the #1 destination, either first or second for millennials for the last 10 years. And just for the record, that's why we legalized marijuana. It's not that we're the mile-high state. Let's be very blunt. When you have that many young people, they don't think there's that big a difference between beer and pot. And they're wrong, just for the record. We made a couple big investments in Colorado. So 1989 or 1990, Federico Pena was the mayor of Denver, convinced the community that we should build DIA, Denver International Airport, under Wellington Webb. It did get built. It opened in 1995. Skeptics said it was going to bankrupt the city and the metropolitan area. Instead, it's been one of the greatest investments from an economic point of view that we could ever imagine. Then when we did fast tracks and passed that in 2004 with a metro-wide light rail and commuter service, I mean, that's one of the big reasons why we are such a magnet for millennials, is they want to be in a place that offers, you know, a different kind of a downtown, a different kind of a city, but also is able to have, you know, you don't have to have two cars in a two-person family. I think that when we step back now and look at all the growth that we've had, and not just in Denver, but down here in Colorado Springs and Fort Collins to the north and Boulder, we see that we are now woefully behind in transportation infrastructure and having a hard time catching up. We also look at water, and water out here in the West is the lifeblood. If you're going to plan long-term growth, you better plan on accommodating the needs for water infrastructure. We finished last year, we did the first time, it took us 2 years, but we finished last November, the first Colorado statewide water plan, and we went from the bottom up. We went out to every basin, talked to all the local communities. We had over 31,000 people participated in making this plan. And with all that engagement, I think we came up with a pretty good plan, and now we're looking at implementing it. But when you look at the total cost, and we're looking at this as a, you know, we need another 400,000 acre-feet of storage to be able to manage and share our conserved water. The overall cost of that infrastructure is about $20 billion over the next 20 years. Now, $14 billion, 70% is going to come from existing water rate structure. That's not such a challenge. But $3 billion is going to come from severance taxes from our oil and gas industry. And we have a totally balanced, and we're a lot of oil and gas out here, a lot of wind, a lot of solar, and we try to keep a market-based approach to that. It doesn't, as a Democrat, one gets criticized for defending fracking. But fracking, my opinion, is one of the great innovations of the last 20 years that allows us to have very inexpensive, very clean compressed natural gas. But anyway, $14 billion that we have from rate structure for water infrastructure, $3 billion from severance taxes from oil and gas, but that means that we have a $3 billion funding gap that we're going to have to come up to, and that's in about the next 30 years. I think it's by 2050. So we're looking at a tax increase or shifting, trying to find some innovative way of funding this. And I think, as with water, we're looking at, you know, different ways to fund things and looking at public-private partnerships in a much more aggressive way than we ever had. You know, the current system is kind of based, it's like looking at automobiles and thinking your choices are variations of the Model T, when the world has come rather far beyond that. We realize that we have to be able to move people. We have to make sure we have water infrastructure. We're going to need technology backbones and you know, high-speed, redundant broadband in every corner of the state. And I think what we've been trying to do is find examples of different states where we're going to be competing in each of those arenas, whether it's water, whether it's technology, whether it's transportation. One of my favorites to use is Utah in transportation, just because you look at every list in transportation infrastructure, they're first, and we're usually down near the middle of the pack. Now, Utah is about half the population we are, or 60% of our population. In lane miles, they have about 5,800 lane miles. We have 23,000. So we're 4 times their lane miles, and yet our budget, our maintenance budget, is $274 million. Theirs is $126. So roughly, you know, our budget's twice theirs, and yet we have 4 times the lane miles. And I mean, they're outspending us by more than $9,500 a mile. And if you drive on the roads in Colorado, go from a state highway and drive into Utah, you will see a noticeable difference. And we've been looking at how to make that maintenance more efficient. We have a whole ramp program. Shailen Bhatt is I just was talking to somebody from Delaware. We borrowed him from Delaware about a year ago to replace our great transportation director, Don Hunt. But he is really looking at how do we squeeze every ounce of productivity out of our investments. And Utah, we have about $170 million a year to put towards new capacity, and Utah is spending about $670 million to new capacity, again, with 60% of our population. And we know that whether it's that kind of a transportation situation or water additions, trying to find ways that we can continue to attract young people by making sure we have more bike trails and hiking trails, more choices, which is what we think millennials like, that we really are going to have to find a way to get these additional resources. And public-private partnerships isn't the only part of the solution. Part of it is I think we do have to change how we fund elections. I'm going to finish with this, that I think a big part of the unhappiness that we see that drives people to support, and I think it's in both parties, right? Whether it's Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, there was a huge pent-up frustration and bitterness that led people to go to much more extreme solutions than before and much less trust in the establishment. To a certain degree, all of us in this room represent the establishment to a great many people, and those folks are very unhappy and bitter. Now, part of that is the attack ads and the relentless pace of these campaigns where dark money comes in. They don't have to say who's funding these ads. I ran two campaigns for mayor, 2 campaigns for governor, and we've still never done a negative ad. But let me tell you, they work, and they did them against me. I only won by 3 points in 2014. Those ads are so powerful because they prey upon people's fear and their anger. Both of those are balanced in most good, quote-unquote, good attack ads. And we saw, if you pull back and look around at commercial business marketing, you never see attack ads. And there's a real reason for that. Think about Coke and Pepsi, my favorite example. Coke hates Pepsi, and Pepsi hates Coke. Go talk to anybody, a bottler or distributor, they just don't like each other. And yet you never see Coke do an attack ad against Pepsi, because it would work. Pepsi's sales would go down. They would have no choice but to do an attack ad against Coke. Coke's sales would go down. Coke would attack Pepsi. Pepsi would attack Coke. You would end up depressing sales in the entire product category of soft drinks. What we're doing is we are depressing the product category of democracy. And these attack ads drive people, especially young people, to tune out. And I am a great defender of American democracy. I think it's the best form of government ever devised, but it is fragile. And it is absolutely dependent on people taking the time to learn the real facts and pay attention to the real situations and possible solutions to the challenges we face. And when people are all tuning out, that doesn't happen. So my request to all of you, in addition to think about having an office in Colorado, because we do love to have engineers in Colorado, I think get involved in your local election system. You don't have to write the dark money checks, but support elected officials who are going to be pro-business. What I always tell people is we're making Colorado the #1 pro-business state in America, but with the highest ethical standards, the highest environmental standards. I think that's a pretty good template for any of us. So get involved in those local, whether it's county commissioners or state legislators, and be a voice for positive campaigns, and make it a little easier so that more people, maybe some of you, can get into politics. I swear to God, I love it. Even on those days when I see an attack ad and my 11-year-old son is cringing in front of the TV, you meet people you'll never meet any other way, and we just have to figure out a way to get more normal people back into politics. You're now delegated, so go to work.